Leave your ego at the door and get ready to be raw. This is Strength to Overcome, where real men find their strength in weakness. Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Strength to Overcome podcast. I'm Ryan here with my co-host Matt. This is episode 27. We're happy to be here with you and excited to catch up on some things and fill everybody in on some new stuff. So, Matt, what's going on with you, brother?
Well, it's funny because we had a terrific guest on last week that got a lot of really good feedback over here in Bradenton, Florida at Crunch. One of our star trainers and just all around good guys really opened up and shared a terrific story that not everybody knew. So it was a really powerful week for us as a lot of people were blown away by watching this man at work and do his craft so well, but having such a tragedy behind it. It was quite inspiring. It was a bit sad, but it was also a reminder to make sure that we press on, we press forward, which is really why we started this podcast in the first place, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was, like you said, it was good to hear from Paul and good to meet him. And, something he said stuck with me, like it's like the way he trains people. In a way, he's trying to heal himself in the fitness and the health that he gives to other people. And, like you said, with that tragedy hanging over his head. And if you haven't listened to it, go back just 1 week and listen to episode 26 with Paul Tringali. But man, he definitely has an inspirational story. It sounds like he's got to be a great energy to have there in the gym with you at Crunch.
Yeah, terrific guy all round. And of course, no one would ever wish going through what he's been through. And it's a remarkable story. So get back and watch. But, I think that leads us to something that you and I were just talking about off air about what's really happening in our lives and where can we find that inner inspiration so that no matter what's happened in our past or what's happening to us even today doesn't affect our mood and can we find that joy from within so that we're not affected by an event or an act of someone or a word or a text or something that can just spiral our whole day and we end up in this negative loop, which we've talked about as far back as the single digit episodes of your personality traits and getting in a negative cycle there. I mean, there's so much to unpack there, but give us the update on your week because we've been watching from a distance. Now we believe we've got a higher power in place, but that's hard to hold on to when all of a sudden you're cast into 13, 14-hour days and you start to look for the silver lining and you're like, man, is this it? Where am I at? Give us the update on you because your testimony episode is still one of the highest grossing episodes that we've had. And I think people are waiting to see you break out of that mold of, okay, is this it? Am I stuck here? Am I happy there? Is there someone that's led me to this divine appointment? Where are we at with you? And give us an update on how you're handling some of the things that we talked about in your very first episode testimony, which I think was episode 3, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, finding joy or finding fulfillment, however you want to describe it, is tough. It has been for me. It seems like I've always, throughout the years, kind of pushed it back and pushed it off into the future. I'll be happy when X happens, or I'll be happy when this happens. And so it always gets pushed back. I'll be happy when I get out of the golf business. I'll be happy when I own my own gym. I'll be happy when I own 2 gyms. I'll be happy when I sell my gym. I'll be happy when I'm married. I'll be happy when I have a child. I'll be happy when the child is, it's that joy and that fulfillment level seems to get pushed farther and farther back day in and day out. And you have to kind of stop and say to yourself, at some point, like, what am I doing here? We've got to figure out a way to create some joy within the process and within the moment. That's what we always used to talk about in golf, right? Was finding joy in the process, not in the result. The joy is not in the score on the scorecard or the score you shoot or how well you play, but the joy is in the process and the preparation, the improvement, the looking back to where you've come and how far you've come. kind of got to apply that a little bit to our lives at some point, don't we? Otherwise, it's just we're going to run out of time eventually, and we're going to be on our deathbeds, and we're going to be wondering, why we didn't spend more time in a state of, what you would call bliss versus a state of want constantly. Is that kind of what you're thinking too?
Well, yeah, I mean, you just pretty much described the whole episode that I think can unfold here because I'm processing my journey where it's similar to yours in that, yes, we both did get to a point where we were at the top of our game physically. We had our own gyms, we were married, then we got kids, and you start checking these boxes off. And I think I've fallen prey to that quite often where, and I've shared this openly, being in this difficult season of my life, both financially, physically, and in my marriage, where I think I've associated that joy to when I get my size back, right? When I get back to being able to do things in the gym and when I get myself back financially stable and when I am in a wonderful, loving marriage that's intimate and has all the joys of that dating feeling, right? It's like, if I could just get that back, I'll be happy, right? And so I think that I looked at everything you just described in my own mind, thinking, well, I'm doing the same thing. And when I really have to stop and think about it, I would love to be in a place where my joy is at a heightened state at all times, regardless of anything, anyone, any circumstance. Now, I don't think that takes away from our drive because if you say, well, I'm content, therefore I don't want to shoot for anything bigger, I think that's where I think I've struggled in being content versus having inner joy. Does that make sense? I think I've kind of even confused myself there, but does that come across as trying to find the difference between the two? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think Ed Milet was a guy who put out the phrase blissful dissatisfaction. Wanting to live in a state of bliss, but be blissfully dissatisfied with your current state, meaning you're always striving for more and something better, but where's the bliss and the joy in the moment and being able to live in that and recognize that? And I think that's where probably both of us are struggling quite a bit is can we find that state of blissful dissatisfaction in our current every now and then I think we get glimpses of it. We get glimpses, and but it's tough when you're feeling like you're getting beat down over and over again, even if it's by your own self and your own mind. And it's tough to kind of pick yourself up. And from the very beginning, we talked about picking ourselves up, dusting ourselves off, and kind of being being reborn in a way throughout this process. So we gotta keep our heads on a swivel and keep our heads up and looking ahead, I think.
Yeah, and as I get back into the gym and I'm working with people that have got their own stories, they've got their own heartache, they've got their own injuries, they've got their own goals. Being able to realize, wow, I have been through a lot in my life and as a trainer and a pretty cool career in a lot of different ways where I'm actually able to sit with someone and really make a connection very quickly. Not through being a chameleon, but because a lot of it I've been through, or I can at least tap into the feeling of my own journey and relating it to what they're going through. And I think that this is probably part of the blessing of why I've been able to build up a good base of clients, this quickly. Even though I've had a good track record of doing that in the past, I think this time it just feels a little more genuine. Not that it wasn't genuine in the past, but this go around it feels like I've got a little bit more sincerity that maybe flows out. And I really want to make sure that I have that joy, that satisfaction of, wow, I've been through a lot. I've made it out the other side on quite a lot of things. And I'm, in my mind, on the cusp of great things unfolding before me. And I think that to stay focused on things ahead, not behind, is what helps me maintain my joy most of the time. I think most people would probably think I'm upbeat and driven towards helping others quite a lot, regardless of what's going on around me. But I think I've fallen into a bit of a trap within my marriage, maybe, where I've allowed tough times to upset the apple cart of my own joy. And so I've got to work really hard on making sure that I set the bar higher on myself and on those around me. I don't need to rely on someone else's mood or joy, whether it be my spouse or whether it be clients or you, right? I shouldn't rely on your mood for my joy to be at its highest point. And that's probably a whole book out there I've got to find and read on being able to maintain that level regardless of what's happening in my moment or that day.
Yeah. Yeah. And my thing is, I've read a little bit of Joe Dispenza's work, the neuroscientist, and he's laid out a little bit of the inner workings of how this happens. And he talks at one point in one of his books about, a mood turning into a temperament and a temperament turning into a personality over a number of years. And so it's a tough thing to think about when can let a mood, which is, or even an emotion, turn into a mood that turns into a temperament that eventually becomes part of our personalities. And I think that's a little bit of what I've had to struggle with is I've got all these emotions bottled up over decades that have created a bit of a personality of someone who's just a little bit sad, just a little bit downtrodden. Haven't always been that way. I don't always act that way, but it seems to be more of my default than anything these days is just to kind of brood over some of the more negative things in life versus focusing on all the joy and bliss and gifts that we have, because there's plenty of them, right? But I think it's a slippery slope that I and a lot of people can fall down is just letting a once temporary mood turn into a personality trait, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a great book. I think that's the Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Is that the
Yeah,
one?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's such a terrific, powerful reminder that if whatever it is that anyone's dealing with that's listening to this has as their default personality, I think over the last 6 months or even the last 5 years of marriage, I think that I've ebbed and flowed a little too much with what's going on around me versus setting my sights on this is who I am, this is who I want to be. What's the best version of Matt? When am I at my best? And I think that you can quickly find yourself getting talked into making significant changes because I think I'll speak for myself. I won't speak for you or anyone else listening, but I think for myself, I have been at my best or I have felt at my energized best when I have a new thing in my life. And I think that goes back to that addictive personality trait that, led me into falling into, you can get pornography or you can get the alcoholism, you can get gambling, you can get watching sports, doesn't really matter. But you get that fix of something new. It's a new thrill, it's a new high, it's a new joy, right? And what I'm working so hard on recently is, of course, shedding all of these things. And we're 27 weeks in now, and I feel like I can say, I'm sober, so to speak, um, or dry, or whatever the term is, for what I've been through. But I look at my last 6 going on 7 months now and say, right, I know I'm changing. I see a change. I'm consistently more joyful, even though I've had these outbreaks of emotion that just want to burst through and take over whoever I'm around. And then I have to reset and say, that's not the real me. That's the old me just looking for a fix. It's looking for that new. It's looking for that high. And when you strip that back and it's gone and you don't have that release, you don't have that dopamine hit, you have to realize that, your whole life, and again, I'm speaking for myself, I have to realize that I have allowed myself to get that new through that addiction. And now that that new is removed, I have to find that joy, that satisfaction of my life, which is a great life. Like, what are we doing here, right? There's plenty of people out there look at us going, these two idiots have everything. What are they moaning about, right? But everyone on this earth has an emotional baggage. And so I have to sit and realize I'm coming out of an addictive lifestyle for 30 years, and now I'm learning to make joy my new addiction without something having to happen in my life. And that's been tough. But I see the fruit every now and then, and I'm like, man, I feel great, and nothing's happened.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's even more interesting to see it in a little baby, when I look in Callan's face and just the littlest things make him smile and bring joy to his little self, and it's like nothing, a crinkling piece of paper or just me looking at him and saying hi in a high pitched voice, and he just gives this big cheesy smile. And um, we all had that joy at some point, as young babies and children. And um, I think we already talked about this on a previous episode, but it's the analogy is like that big mansion with all the rooms and all the lights on in the house, right? Where, if you view your life as that big mansion, that big house, and you've got all the lights on in the house, but one by one over the years, whether it's a bully, whether it's a divorce or it's a relationship issue, whether it's an addiction like you're talking about, one by one, those lights in those rooms just get get fluttered out and gets shut out. And at the all of a sudden you're 38, 39, 45, 46 years old, and your house is dark. We got to figure out a way to turn those lights back on, like you're saying, and it can't be reliant on other people for sure. It really can't be reliant on things or people, right? It's got to come from deep within, and it's got to be it's got to be authentic, that's for sure, because I've learned, especially over the last year or so, it's not going to be cars, it's not going to be things, babies, you know, travel, vacation, money. It's none of it's going to bring the joy factor up. It's got to come from deeper within.
Yeah, do you feel that you've been able to find that? I mean, how old's Callan now? We 4 months in?
No, he's 15 weeks today, about almost 3.5 months.
Yep. So have you seen yourself shifting that needle? The one you were just describing, where all those things that we think are going to bring joy, have you been able to find something new in the last 3.5 months?
A little bit here and there, little glimpses, little moments with him where he just smiles or makes a little sound, and it's like everything kind of disappears, and it's like, all right, this is what joy is about, and you know this is what life is about. But then in comes some other noise or feedback that kind of distorts that vision or that thought, and it's like all of a sudden you're looking at your phone at something, or you get distracted by something else, and it's like, man, if we could just stay focused on the little joyful things in life that bring us a bit of happiness, we might be able to build something pretty cool out of it, right?
Yeah, and I think that, I look back on my childhood, which I'm reading through a terrific book now. A client of mine and I are reading through this book together. She's like a mother figure to me, and so we're reading through something she's read before, and it's a terrific book that does talk a little bit about exploring the inner child that's inside of us all, right? Every one of us has some stories that we remember or we've, blocked out, and there's a lot of people that say, well, I don't want to know, right? That's a lot of baggage I want to pull out. And some people say, no, I want to know, but I can't remember. And so there's all this information in the, ones and zeros in this matrix of existence, however you want to describe it, right? We went through it. It most definitely did impact who we are today, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, just the way it is, right? And so you were raised in a broken home and I was not. Does that mean that you're going to be stereotypically, prone to repeating that? Who knows? Maybe you are, maybe you're not. It depends on who you hang around with now. So I think that something I've got to look at is, am I putting in the effort right now to make sure that no matter what is happening around me, to me, whether someone cuts me off at the lights, someone's rude to me at the gym, something doesn't go the way I want it to in my house, or my kids do something, am I allowing anything in my immediate vicinity to strip that joy away? And the joy that I'm describing is I have life in me and I can create anything I want with that breath of life that I have in me that keeps me going until the day I die. I can create any future I want. I've just got to work really, really hard to get to that, and keeping my eyes focused on the goal, which I've shared in the past, of being on a bigger scale, able to help others through it. And so I was thinking about it this morning on my walk. I'm hearing this thought that says, well, you want to be able to help on a bigger, grander scale, or through a retreat where people come to you, how will you be able to help those if you're still looking for the things around you to bring you joy? Kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, right?
Mhm.
Am I waiting for that next fix, or that next addiction, or that next high, or that lump of money that makes me joyful? Or is it a new relationship that's trying to, you know, tease you into, oh, well, it's greener on the other side, right? And I've been divorced and remarried, so I can speak to that highly. The grass isn't greener, it's not browner, it's nothing. It's just you tried something different, and you've got to now look at the patterns. And I think we've talked about this. I think you said it way back early, where, you're the common denominator, right? So that's a real nasty slap in the face, where you start to see the same patterns happen in your life, where it's like, all right, well, it, let's start looking at myself, right? And so, can I find the best version of Matt no matter what's going on around me? Or am I going to repeat the same mistakes over and over? And I'm not saying just in my marriage, I'm talking about finances, talking about how you speak to your friends, how you spend your time. And now, as a dad, am I going to continue to make the same mistakes when I discipline my kids or have fun with my kids a certain way? Am I going to repeat the times that I don't quite nail it? Am I going to repeat those mistakes, or am I going to make the big effort to get better, so that I'm a better husband, I'm a better father, I'm a better friend, I'm a better employee, I'm a better trainer, I'm a better son-in-law, right? I want to be at the best of my game all the time, no matter what happens around me. And so that thought that said, yeah, you want to speak to a larger audience, you want to have people pay good money to come and sit in your presence and glean from what you've been through, then stop relying on the mood of those around you, or the things that you think you want to bring you joy. If you're not getting those, you've still got to be joyful. You've still got to be able to lead whoever it is that's brought to your flock out through the wilderness and into something better, right? That's where I'm really working hard on. And I'll tell you that means you're giving up and starting to look for anything in your life that starts to strip that joy. And I'll use sport as a good example. There was a time in my life where my team didn't win. I'm in a bad mood for a day. And I think we all do that, right? Our favorite golfer doesn't win, or chokes, or our country doesn't win the Ryder Cup, or whatever. It doesn't matter. And I still know people to this day where if their team doesn't win, it's like, man, steer clear of them for a couple of days. Now, what in the world are we doing when we let something like that dictate our mood, right? So, I've just probably lost half our audience because they're all like, oh, yeah, I do that. Like, okay, well, that's fine. But I had to get to the point where I wanted to be able to enjoy a game or an event or whatever it was that, there's a score involved in, and get to the end and say, that was a good game, good match, good fight, whatever it was, right? And go, wow, that was pretty cool. People going at it at the top of their game. And today that team, that person won, and be okay with it. That's really actually hard to do. Have you gone through any of that kind of thought processing as a sport lover yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I had to, I grew up being a big Dallas Cowboys football fan, and I had to for those of you that know out there, they haven't won a Super Bowl since 1995. I was 9 years old, and over the years, I just found myself just in a bad mood and very stressed over watching them lose continuously. And, getting hyped up for every game, every Sunday, every Monday night, whatever it was, and just being distraught over the outcome. And I mean, it's been probably 10 to 15 years now. I just had to disassociate myself from them and from sport in general, the NFL in general, just because it was just too much stress on me as an individual. I was living and dying by the sports team that I had just attached myself to. And, I'd like to say my life has been a lot better since disassociating. Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. But what I'll tell you is I don't have that weekly stress of wondering if the Cowboys are going to win or lose. Gosh, it was just a tough period to have to watch them, week in and week out lose and go up and down, up and down, up and down. And, for a while there, it was just kind of turmoil. So I think removing myself from it was probably the best thing I did in terms of that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool for you to share that because my wife is a Cowboys fan too, and I think when I met her, she would tell stories. I didn't see this per se, but she would tell stories of, jumping up and down on the couch, yelling at the TV, waving whatever it is that's got the blue and white on there. I think I'd probably already started to separate myself from sport in the past, so I had already started down that journey of being able to let it go. But I was able to remember the times where I did do that, and it's like we don't even know these people, right? I used to tell clients, I'd say, listen, so if in the dugout or before they'd come up the race, what if all these players played a trick on everyone and they swapped uniforms, but we couldn't tell, right? So they've all run out and you spend the whole game cheering for your team. And at the end of the game, everybody takes their helmets off and reveals that they had swapped before they came out, right? In the locker rooms, they all put on the opposite team's gear and you couldn't see. What would your emotions be if all of a sudden you've got this joy that you scored the game-winning field goal from 75 yards out, record tying or, whatever it is, longest ever, I don't even know what that is, but you're jumping up and down in the stands, really going absolutely bananas, like acting like an absolute maniac. And then they all take their gear off, and you're like, wait a minute. My guys are wearing the red. Think about your emotions right there in the stand. 100,000 people going berserk, and all of a sudden now you realize that the players change uniforms. How do you feel now?
Yeah, you wouldn't really know what to think, would you?
Yeah, so are you cheering for the people or the
It's almost as if you're cheering for the idea of something, of what you think they stand for, and that team, that franchise, that spirit. It's like you're and I guess there's a deep-rooted thing in psychology with that whole thing. That's why we attach ourselves to sport, because it gives us a sense of involvement and sense of community, right? And we have kind of our tribe that we create. Yeah, people let their so I'm glad you and I don't do that anymore with letting our joy ride on the outcome of a game. That's I think the last time I did that was with Tiger Woods, and luckily he was pretty darn good, so we got to see him win quite a lot. So that was good in his era, but no, we don't do that anymore. So that's a good thing for us.
Do you think, now that we're kind of broaching it, do you think that what you've been through with letting go of that is something that you could apply to somewhere else in your life?
Probably so, right? If you can figure out a way to disassociate yourself from the outcome of X, Y, or Z and say, you know, no matter what happens here, I'm going to be this, or I'm going to react with kindness and compassion and joy, overall joy. It's tough though, because you can't ignore a lot of these things in your life like you can ignore sport. We can just turn off the TV and not watch it, but we still have to have these interactions and these encounters in everyday life, so we can't really avoid them like we can avoid sport. So it's a little different, but if we could figure out a way to keep that same mindset, be super helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about it almost like you've got this superpower. And as I think through my life, there's been some people in my life where I can honestly say every time I've been around them, there's a good spirit, there's a good energy. They're just fun to be around. Even if their current circumstances seem dire or they're going through a tough time, there's just always this spark that they find. I think you've probably got people in your life where you could probably say that about them as well. And you're like, man, how do you do it, right? What do you lean on? What are you looking for? How are you able to maintain it? And then there's other people that you know where they seem to have it all, but they're just bitching and moaning and constantly like, oh, I wish I had this. I wish I had that. I want that. It's like, oh my goodness. Right. And I think at some level, I think, someone that might be living in a war-torn country or a third world, might be looking at us going, man, what are you guys moaning about, right? So it's all relative. And I'd love to get to that place where I am the person I was describing. I've got a couple of people in my life where I know that at any moment I could reach out to them and they're just level. They've found a way to stay within their preferred mood, regardless of what's going on around them. And they're the people that, we all want to spend our time around because they just find a way. And I think that if we aren't careful, we can very easily become, like you said, a personality just by allowing one thing in. So, I mean, I'm pretty inspired to really work towards a larger audience and a retreat and being able to help on a bigger scale because I've mastered something that I think is probably not even on people's radar, to be honest with you.
Well, that's what I was going to say is that you don't even have to master it, right? As long as being aware of it is almost gives us a leg up and a step ahead because I think so many people just they go about their days, day in and day out and just have no awareness of what's going on. And so for us to be able to reflect on that and kind of call it out is I think important as a first step and a step to help other people.
Yeah, I'm pretty motivated because this is something that I found myself just recently finding peace in. And I know the difference because it's when I'm overwhelmed with the joy and nothing's happened. And I just stop and I have to contemplate what just happened. I didn't get a text. I didn't get a call. I wasn't with someone. I didn't see anything. I didn't do anything. There was no great financial gain or new friend that I made or nothing really happened. There's just this sense of joy that comes over you and you pause and say, wow, I'm at peace. Right now I am at peace. To be able to bottle that to the point where you are able to, yeah, you get what I'm saying, right? I mean, and I've had those moments over this last 6 months. I've had some really peaceful moments that allow me to go for a walk every morning and pray. I look at my arm as I've shared. All right, get on the walk, and I say thank you for this torn bicep. I know that my life has completely turned 180. The name of my old gym, right? 180. I've completely turned my life around, or it's being turned around by that one moment, that one small moment. And since that moment, I've had some horrible, horrible lows where I've just lashed out and I've been hateful and nasty and just not known how to handle my current situation. But I've also had some amazing moments of peace that it's like, wow, why can't I stay in this state? And why did I allow myself to lose it and come unglued like a kid wanting all their things that they've had all these years? And now I've chosen to keep myself so focused on a great marriage, a beautiful wife, rebuilding our finances, and of course, me being back in the gym to rebuild myself physically. And when I really align myself and I have a day where those things fall into place, I sense a real peace come over me. But I've got to realize that when I have a day where I maybe don't get to work out, I got tied up with a client, or between sessions, I just didn't take the time, or what happened, it could be anything. So I didn't work out, maybe you know, the bills came in all at once. And it's like, crap, and maybe I allow my wife's mood to, shift me into thinking, well, what the hell am I doing here? Like, this is pointless, right? And so you allow those three things to all accumulate into your mind and you start telling yourself, well, what's the point? I might as well just go and reset in all three areas. I might as well start juicing. I might as well, just sell everything and live in a tent and, to hell with the marriage, right? And you allow that negative spiral to come in, and that's what you were talking about earlier, right? So I want to get to that place where I miss my workout, no big deal, I'll get one tomorrow. The bills came in, hey, do I believe in a higher power that's going to provide me another client or two and I'm going to have some income that maybe I wasn't anticipating? Absolutely. It happens to me on almost a daily basis. And if my wife's not in the greatest mood because she's had a crappy day, am I able to be that calm, that peace for her, or am I going to allow that mood to shift my mood, right? So I'm pretty excited about this. I'm kind of calling myself out here pretty harshly, but I really am drawn towards having a bigger impact. And I just feel this overwhelming sense that, Matt, you want to do that? You want to have a bigger audience? You want to make a bigger impact? Yeah, try going through this where your joy is up and dialed in regardless of what's going on and believing in that higher power that everything's going to be okay. And it is, right?
Yeah.
So
I like it, man. It's good stuff. I think it's something to chew on this week as we move into more guests down the pipeline. It's kind of a good reminder for us of where we need to refocus, stay focused on, and kind of keep grinding.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I'm proud of you 3.5 months in. I believe you've gone to the 13-hour shifts now where you're up at the crack with Callan, and the Mrs. Erica's not even home till probably 7 o'clock. Is that right?
Yeah, she gets home about 6:30, just in time to put 'em down to bed. So we're
Yeah, so
full
you're in the
full
grind,
timing.
man. Yeah, you're in the grind, and a shout out to you. I'm proud of you. I know that this has been a long journey, so thanks for all you do, checking in on me, and you're doing great, man. You got to fire me off some photos, and be proud of yourself without being, you know, arrogant about it. I'm just saying, be proud of what you've achieved in this last 3.5 months, man, and particularly this last week of literally being the stay-at-home, full-time, 13, 14-hour straight dad. That's a big deal, man. So congrats on what you're doing there. It's no mean feat. Most of the time it's women doing that. And, shout out to all those that are doing it, men or women that are doing it, right? It's a lot of work. So keep up the good work, man. I know there's a time coming for you where things will ease up, but for now, hang in there and, try and find that joy. And sometimes it's nice to lean on someone else for it, but I think this week I'm going to challenge you to find that joy within, and I'll do the same for myself, and I'll try and keep you accountable to it. And hopefully in a week from now, we can look back and say, wow, let's tell some stories about it and inspire some people to break out of their bad emotion that turns into a personality. So thanks for the reminder, man. It's a great book. I need to dig that one out too. So thanks for the
Yeah,
reminder on
man.
that.
Absolutely. All right, guys. We will catch you next week.
Appreciate it. Stay strong, guys.